First thing you're going to do is loosen up the jam nut. I pre-sprayed everything because it is rusty. So with the tie rod in, it's easier to loosen this jam nut. Now go ahead and take off the tie rod end nut. 21mm socket. Let's take this tie rod end nut off. Now you're going to take a hammer and you're going to hit the knuckle right here. And let's see if we can get that tie rod end to fall out. Now the jam nut's already loose, so hopefully this tie rod end just spins out. And if you're going to replace it, you know that you turn that jam nut a half an inch, not even like a half a turn. So make sure you bottom it out. If not, you can count your turns when you back it out. So you're going to use this 12 o'clock as one turn. We're on 15, 16. Exactly 20. So you're gonna, with a pair of pliers, you're going to take off this vent boot on the bellow boot, a little vent tube. So I'm going to take the clamp off there. And I'm going to take the clamp off the actual tie rod end. Going to be like that. Bring it down. Now the clamp on the bellow boot to the rack, we're not going to reuse because you really can't reuse these. So I'm just going to cut it off and then I'll end up replacing this with a wire tie. You can try to replace them sometimes if you can disconnect it that way, but then you're going to have to try to loop it and crimp it. So I have to slide the bellow boot down this inner tie rod end, so you want to lube up the bellow boot so it slides easy. So I'm going to take a screwdriver, just spray some penetrating spray in there, work it around. So now you're just going to grab the bellow boot and slide it down the tie rod end. And you can expose the actual joint where it screws into the rack. I'm just going to clean the grease off so you can get a better visual of what this looks like and what we're doing here. Your new tie rod end will come with new grease, and I'll show you how to pack that before you install. So you can use a pair of adjustable pliers, unless you have a wrench that big. You're going to turn this counterclockwise. Just give it a good twist and you'll hear it snap. Don't hammer on this because of the internal seals on that rack, you'll destroy it. Before removing the bellow boot and the jam nut, I want to measure this and put it in the right. I can't just put this down there because I've got to put the bellow boot back on. So I'm going to take off the new jam nut. And instead of counting the turns on this, I'm going to line these up, confirm the height. And it's not life-threatening, but you want to get it as accurate as possible. Now you can use a chalk line for marker works, but I like to use the old tape. So it's as close as you're going to get. And the reason why you want this as close as possible is so that when you go to the alignment shop, because you're going to have to get an alignment, right? It's not so far off that you're going to eat your tires up in a possible 4 miles or plus radius. So that's the whole point of this. Let's try to get it as close as possible so that you can get to the alignment shop. Now we can take this jam nut off, clamp off, pull the boot up. So I'm going to try, without using a vise, I'm going to see if I can just put a pair of locking pliers on this, because the threads are pretty rusted, so it might take a lot to get this off. So it's 7/8 or 24mm socket. It should slide right over this. There we go. Nice. Take that clamp off. Now we can just slide this bellow boot right down, hopefully. Now your new inner tie rod end comes with this grease, and you're going to just open it up, and you are going to pack the inside of the joint. And that doesn't mean just placing it here. You want to pack it in and then actually try to move it around. So I just put it in the surface there, but I'm going to show you a little trick of the trade once we get it in the vehicle. So now I'm going to reinstall my bellow boot, put that clamp on, and install my jam nut. I'm going to bring it right down to the tape. Then I know it's about a half a turn to lock it up on the tie rod, the outer tie rod. Perfect. So this is one of the times I'm going to suggest using medium strength thread locker, because there is no lock on this design for this Dodge. They literally just make it so that you tighten it up. So now we're going to thread it in. Once that's bottomed out, I'll show you how we're going to pack that grease in. So to tighten this, you don't want to give a slow turn, because you're going to actually twist that gear. It could break off the gears up here at the top of the pinion. So we just want a quick little snug push. Now we know that's tight. Now here's the little trick to get that grease to pack in the rest of the way. Now I have the leverage that I can pull this down. And I want to work that around, get that grease in there. All right, let's put the bellow boot back on. Don't forget to get the vent tube lined up. Perfect. You want to bring this boot back to that notch right there. See the notch in the inner tie rod end? Bring it so it stops right there. Good practice to do always. There's already some grease left in here, but if it's not, pull a little screwdriver back or put silicone paste or grease on the inside of this boot, because you want that to turn when the alignment's getting done and they turn this inner tie rod end. You don't want that belt to twist, and it will if it's on a dry surface. Then you have a chance of that boot ripping and getting dirt inside and destroying the rack. Put that clamp back on. We'll put the little clamp on the tube. So now I'm going to take a new wire tie. I'm just going to slip it through. I like to give it a little extra snugness, and there we go. So now that we know where our jam nut's going to stay right there, we can remove the tape before we put the outer tie rod end on. Now, before installing the new tie rod end, I like to put a little never seize on the threads. And now I can count my turns starting at 20. It was 20, so I'm going to go back. Look at this, 20. So before you install, take the plastic boot off. This cover is just for packaging and transportation so that the rubber boot doesn't get cut. Then you're going to line it up. Might have to move that a little bit. Get the knuckle to go in. .21mm socket. You can just snug it up. So what happens when you can't tighten it, the spindle's spinning in here? I'm going to show you a little trick. tie rod end is spinning in the knuckle here from the shaft, so we're going to do it by hand. 21mm wrench holding onto the nut and 10mm holding onto the stud. And we'll just snug it down enough, hopefully we can seat it, and then use the air gun. Let's see if we went far enough. Beautiful. Torque spec is 60 foot-pounds. 21mm socket. Torque specs is 85 to 110 foot-pounds. We're going to do it at 100. And do it in a crisscross pattern.